Good morning. Today we're going to be talking about 5-4 solving rational equations. So we need to remember a rational equation, or any equation, is a problem that originally has an equal sign in it. Up until this point, we have been simplifying or adding or subtracting rational expressions. So expressions don't have an equal sign in the problem already, whereas an equation does. So a rational equation is an equation that contains one or more rational expressions. So we have 4 steps we're going to use to solve rational expressions. Number 1, we are going to factor the denominators if possible, and then find the LCD for all the denominators. You're going to factor the denominators, not the numerators, just the denominators. You're going to then multiply every term in the equation by your least common denominator. You must write this step out. It is a non-negotiable. You have to write it out. Step 3, you're going to solve for the variable with the appropriate method. If it's linear, solve it. If it's a quadratic, factor and solve it. And then you're going to check your solutions. Because of the algebra we use, sometimes this causes extraneous solutions. Remember, those are extra solutions that don't work in the problem. We need to make sure the denominator does not equal 0 because we cannot divide by 0. So what we're going to do today, up until this point, we've been simplifying or making a fraction. Today we are going to get rid of the fraction, and that is our goal. So if you need to take a second to finish writing these notes down, go ahead and pause the video. So looking at number 1, the first thing I'm going to do is figure out what my least common denominator is. So when I look at all my numbers, 4, 8, and 2, the least common denominator between those is 8. And then I also need the x. So my least common denominator is 8x. The first step, I'm going to rewrite the problem, but I'm going to multiply each term by 8x. So this is what it looks like. 1/4 times 8x plus 6 over 8x times 8x equals 1/2 times 8x. Okay, that is the non-negotiable step I was talking about. You have to write this out. That way, when we go to simplify, you're not going to make a careless mistake. Okay, so this is one step you cannot skip. It can get a little long, but you still need to write it down. So from here, we're going to reduce. 4 goes into 8 twice. So 1 times 2x is 2x. 8x goes into 8x once, so all I have left is the 6. Equals 2 goes into 8 4 times. 1 times 4x is 4x. Now it's a simple linear equation that I can solve. I'm going to subtract 2x from both sides. So I get x equals 3. I need to check to see if it works in my denominator. So the only denominator I need to check is 8x. 3 times 8 is 24. It is not 0. So this is a solution. Let's look at number 2. First thing I'm going to figure out is what is my least common denominator. Again, there's nothing to factor here, so between 28 and 4, that is 28. And then I bring my factors along. So step 1, I'm going to multiply both of these by every single term and write it right next to it. So it's 9 over 28 times 28 times x plus 2. Plus 3 over x plus 2 times 28 times x plus 2 equals 3/4 times 28 times x plus 2. Once we have that step down, now we just start reducing. So 28 cancels with the 28. I'm left with 9 times x plus 2. X plus 2's cancel. I'm left with 3 times 28. 4 goes into 28 7 times. I'm left with 21 times x plus 2. If after that step you still had a denominator, that means you didn't find your least common denominator and you might either need to go back and figure out where you went wrong or do it again. So from here we're going to distribute. We are going to go ahead and collect like terms. And I'm going to move x's to one side and numbers to the other. So I get 12x equals 60. So x equals 5. Again, I check in my denominator. If I plug in 5 here, 5 plus 2 is 7. That is not 0. Therefore, this is a solution. Let's try 2 more. Okay, looking at number 3. Our LCD is 6 times x plus 1. So we're going to go ahead and write that out. So 2x plus 1 over x plus 1 times 6 times x plus 1 equals 2 over 6 times 6 times x plus 1. Reduce. The x plus 1's cancel out. Leaves me with 2x plus 1 times 6. And over here my 6's cancel. Leaves me with 2 times x plus 1. So if I look back, and if you can remember, when we were in middle school, we first learned about solving proportions. And to solve proportions, remember we told you there was a trick and you could cross multiply. If you look, that's what I ended up with right here, is the cross multiplication. Least common denominators is why cross multiplication works. So getting back to our math, we're going to distribute. So I get 12x plus 6 equals 2x plus 2. Take x's to one side and numbers to the other. We can divide both sides by 10. We always reduce our fractions. So x equals negative 2/5. Again, I look, does it make either of my denominators 0? No, it does not. Let's move on to number 4. On number 4, I only have one denominator. Therefore, that is your least common denominator. So let's multiply every term, and that includes the whole number, by that denominator. So let's go ahead and do our canceling. The x minus 5 cancels, leaves me with 5. Equals x minus 5 cancels again, leaves me with x. I'm going to distribute the negative 1. I get negative x plus 5. Let's combine like terms. X minus x is 0, so I end up with 5 equals 5. So I need to ask myself, is that a true statement or a false statement? That is true. Therefore, my answer is all real numbers except I need to figure out what number would make my denominator 0, and it's 5. So I need to include that in my answer, except x cannot equal 5. Now if 5 equals 5, so if that were 5 equals 4, that would be a false statement. And remember, anytime we have a false statement, it is no solution. Let's go on to number 5. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find my least common denominator. In this case, it is 2 times x minus 1. So let's write it out. So it's x over x minus 1 times 2 times x minus 1. Minus 1 times 2 times x minus 1 equals x over 2 times x minus 1. Okay, from here we reduce. X minus 1's canceled. 2 times x is just 2x. Negative 1 times 2 is negative 2, and then I'm going to distribute that negative 2. So I get negative 2x plus 2. Here my 2's cancel out, so I'm going to multiply x times x minus 1, and I get x squared minus x. This is now a quadratic, so we need to combine like terms and then set equal to 0. So when I combine like terms, I end up with 2 equals x squared minus x. I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides. And now I'm going to factor it. So it's x minus 2 and x plus 1. So when I solve that, I get x equals 2 and x equals negative 1. I need to look back at my denominator and make sure, do either of those make that a 0? 2 minus 1 is 1. Negative 1 minus 1 is negative 2. So they both work. Looking at number 6, my least common denominator is simply x minus 1. So let's multiply everything by x minus 1. And remember, you must write out this step. Okay, the more difficult these get, the more important it is that you write that step out because you will miss something. X minus 1's cancel, I am left with x. Here I'm going to distribute, so I get x squared minus x. X minus 1's cancel equals 4x minus 3. Combine my like terms, I end up with x squared equals 4x minus 3. Set it equal to 0. And go ahead and factor it. So I get x minus 3 and x minus 1. So my two answers are x equals 3 and x equals 1. I need to look back at my denominators So 3 minus 1 is 2. That is fine. 1 minus 1 is 0. That does not work. So we're going to cross it off. So my only solution is x equals 3. 2 more, and then it's time for you to start working on your assignment. Okay, looking at number 7, you'll notice I have a quadratic in the denominator. First thing I need to do before I can even figure out my least common denominator is go ahead and factor that. So this factors to be x plus 3 and x plus 2. So to find my least common denominator, remember we find our shared factors and write them once. And then any leftover factors get brought along. In this case, I don't have any. So when I'm writing out this next step, I am going to go ahead and write the first fraction in factored form on the denominator so I can cancel things out. So after we write it out, we're going to go ahead and cancel out what we can. So my x plus 3's cancel, x plus 2's cancel, I'm left with 3. X plus 2 cancels, I'm left with x minus 1 times x plus 3. And that will have to be FOILed out. Equals, my x plus 3's cancel, I'm left with 7 times x plus 2. So let's FOIL and distribute. This FOILs out to be x squared. I get a positive 3x and a negative 1x, which makes a positive 2x. My 3's cancel out. And again, it's a quadratic, so I'm going to set equal to 0. And I'm going to go ahead and factor it. I get a negative 7 and a positive 2. So my answers are 7 and negative 2. Again, I need to check, do both of them work in my denominators? In this case, negative 2 does not. So 7 is my only solution. Okay, looking at number 8. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to notice that I need to, the second fraction, it is not in the right form. That should be a negative x plus 2. So let's take a look. Okay, again, this is not in the correct form. So from here, we are going to factor our denominators. So this just becomes 2 over x plus 2 minus x over negative 1 times x minus 2. because remember, we never want a negative x. That's going to equal x squared plus 4 all over x minus 2x plus 2. The great thing with a negative 1 in the denominator is that I can move it. If I have a negative 1 on the bottom or a negative 1 on top, it doesn't matter. They both work. No matter where that negative is, it is the same problem. So I am going to actually negative or a minus times a negative 1. I'm going to make that into a plus. So now when I look at my least common denominator, I no longer have a negative 1 down there I have to worry about. So it's x minus 2x plus 2. So let's take a look at this problem. And now let's do our reducing. X plus 2's cancel, leaves me with 2x minus 4. X minus 2 cancels, leaves me with x squared. It's not equals. X squared plus 2x. And over here, all of that cancels, leaves me with x squared plus 4. So if I combine like terms, I have x squared plus 4x minus 4 equals x squared plus 4. I'm going to bring both of these terms over to the other side. When that happens, my x squareds cancel out. So in that case, since x squareds are going to cancel out, let's rethink that. I'm actually just going to take my x squared to the other side, because that means it's going to be linear, and I'm just going to solve it. So I get left with 4x minus 4 equals 4. Add 4 to both sides. X equals 2 is my only solution. So when I look at my denominators, when I plug them in, does it work? In fact, it does not. Okay, it will get me a 0. 2 minus 2 is 0. So in this case, my answer is no solution, since none of the solutions I found work. As usual, if you have any questions, email me and let me know.